So again, my name's Lenore Kay, and I'm going to moderate our panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Eva, and we're going to go down the panel. We're going to have each of our speakers introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves. So I'll start with Eva.
This works?
Oh, good, yeah.
Whoa. Okay, Eva Wyszkowski. Actually, my name is Eva. I was born in Argentina, so it's a slightly different pronunciation of the name. And if you hear an accent, that's where it comes from. I also happen to speak Polish, but in some of the English you can hear. But anyway, what's important, I'm a graduated teacher. I have a humanities degree. I'm also a mechanical engineer. And I spent my entire career working for Fluor, all 36 years of it. And I'm a vice president there. I've been one for the last 10 years. And I do projects, basically as a project director.
Hi, my name's Lorna, and I am with Enbridge Pipelines. I'm the senior manager of our Integrity Technology Advancement Group, and that's within the pipeline integrity realm because it's not pretty obvious from the title. So I have in my portfolio today, I have industry advocacy, which doesn't sound very engineering, does it? But it's actually totally engineering, because you actually have to try and look at the code standards, regs, and how you're going to influence that. So it's really cool. And then benchmarking and statistics. And then I also have a third area, which is the pipeline integrity research and development. So those are all areas that I work in. So innovation this morning, really, really interesting for me. So metallurgical engineer, BSc, Masters of Engineering, and an MBA. Both general for the MBA, and then risk management is my specialization. But 80% of the way through my PhD, got stuck on my data, don't know how to get past that, but we'll finish it.
Denise Chenger. I went back to school a couple of years ago. I left a corporate position as director of operations in the downstream end of things and quit my job to go back to school and do a PhD in civil engineering. However, it's in project management, strategy, neuroscience, which is how we make decisions. We were talking about intuition this morning, and then risk management from a perspective of how we view risk as opposed to risk and uncertainty and probability. Finished a couple of years ago, have been trying to find my way in the upstream end of things, and happy to say the last couple of months I think things are finally starting to turn as to what my role looks like in upstream with more on the engineering side. So currently teaching part-time at Mount Royal University, so ran back, taught a class, told them about some of the comments you folks had about finding your way in industry, and then ran back out of there to come here. And then I also do some part-time consulting on the strategy side with executives in the oil and gas industry.
Kim Tulloch, I work with BP. I've been with BP for 15 years. I started out in our liquids business as a facilities engineer in small projects. I came back, moved into a wells HSE role, then into a major projects role, and now I'm activity planning manager. I'm currently transitioning into more of a technical surface facilities team lead role in our in situ business. And looking forward to learning more about the technical side of the in situ business.
My name is Chung, and I'm with Newalta as the general manager. I started my career as a process engineer in an oil refinery, and you had to move at that time. You know, if you want career advancement, you better move. It was Fort St. John of Calgary, and I said, well, I think I better go to Calgary. And I'm fortunate enough to be moved back to Vancouver, and I'm based out of Vancouver, and I've been with Newalta for 10 years now.
I'm Lois Garrett. I graduated from mechanical engineering at U of C in 1980, and then went back when my kids were young to do a master's in civil engineering, specializing in project management. I work at Husky, and although I did plant engineering through most of my career, doing that, driving into the middle of nowhere, you know, and freezing weather and all the rest, I'm now the VP of Corporate Responsibility. So we do the remediation and reclamation of sites that are no longer useful. We have a budget of about $200 million a year for that. And as well, we do industrial hygiene, security, emergency response, business continuity, and all those kind of looking after the environment and people.
Super, that's great. I thought what I'd do, because I've been pretty quiet all day, is take a chance. I'd like to ask the first question. So again, this is out to just any member of the panel. How do you know when you've been in a company for a long time, and you just feel like there's nothing more for you at that company. How do you know when the right time is to leave?
I can take that one. Okay, I can so answer this one. Okay, so I had a role with a company when I first graduated from university, and I worked with them for almost 9 years. And the last 2 years, every day that I got up for work, I had a stomachache. And it was just tension, just not feeling good. And, you know, I just thought maybe I had a bug, and you go through some of those things internally. And then eventually I just realized I was just very unhappy where I was. So tried to look for different opportunities to move, and I had a fellow who just would not let me move. So at that point I decided it was time for a change. And the change was 2 years too long. So what I should have done is listen to my body, listen to what it was telling me, and made the change when that started happening, instead of being the stubborn little thing that I am, and try to fix it all and waste 2 years, which is really what I did.
Great, super. No, there's one more. There's actually another mic on the table as well.
I've recently gone, or I'm addressing that issue. BP has gone through a bit of a downsizing. We've shut down our operated project. We've moved it back into resource appraise. And so I'm moving into it. We went through a reorganization, and the role I came up with is it's surface facilities team lead. It's a new role, so it's not really defined. And I'm reporting to someone who's a bit of a micromanager, and it didn't really feel like it felt more like a demotion than anything. And so I was not happy with it. I spent a couple weeks just not being excited to go to work. I talked to one of my mentors, and he said, well, talk to the regional president, talk to Christina, and tell her give her the chance to say something, tell her what you're feeling, and talk to your line manager. And so, in having those conversations with people, you understand, okay, this is a developmental role in terms of you can build this role. It's a white page. You can make it into something. We're growing, and I recognize that you want some opportunities to do some other things. So as things come up, that there's an opportunity to work for global BP and on certain projects, we'll keep you in mind, that sort of stuff. So where I was ready to kind of walk, that we're in a spot now where we're both kind of, okay, let's see how this goes, and let's give it a shot, and we'll go from there. So I think there's two ends of the spectrum, and you just have to feel your way through.
Okay, great, thanks. So there is a mic on the floor.
I'm going to kind of drift away from the women in engineering thing, and I noticed that a lot of you have graduate degrees. I'm wondering when you figured that it was a good time to go back and pursue education, and how that affected your career and like the stoppage. I know we talked a lot about maternity leave earlier yesterday and how that was a break in your career, but like going back to school is also something that might affect that. How did you guys know when you wanted to do that?
A good question. I will say too that I'm single with no kids, so I've had that opportunity to be able to do that. Did an MBA in Ivy, actually flew to Toronto every 2 weeks for 2 years to pursue that. Then when I went to, I was working for an oil and gas company in Alaska. And the reason I went back to school was to help the career, but also to meet people, to, your knowledge, your curiosity, to keep adding to your resume. But when I went up to Alaska, fairly lonely as a female up there. I don't know if you've seen the commercials now, but there's a saying that they say in Alaska the odds are really good, but they also say the goods are really odd. So I thought, I thought as a single person, right, let's go back to school again. I started a Master's of Science up there, which was my introduction to engineering, and really enjoyed it, but was transferred middle of the semester. So again, I continued to fly back and forth into Alaska. For me, it's always been more about curiosity, and the jobs have always come out of it as opposed to doing it to get the job. So that was the main reason for myself. I had the time as a single person to be able to do it too. And when I was flying back and forth to Toronto, a lot of my schoolmates had said to me, like, how do you do it? And I said, I don't know how people do it with families, like with a young family, because it really is a big time commitment. So it was the right time for me as a single person. But from my advice, I would say, once you've got some good experience and career under your belt is really the time I would recommend going back, as opposed to doing an undergraduate and right into a graduate. You really need that foundation to kind of build on, and I think you become a better asset to your company once you've got a foundation. Plus, it's so much more interesting when you've got a foundation that you can go back to school. So. No. Yes, exactly. And they do sort of classify them as the A in the top at schools and that. And I was, for myself, I thought, when you get accepted into a really good business school, not that there's anything wrong with EOC, and, teach there and did a presentation for the students last week. But for me, I just liked the format of it. It was case-based, right, as opposed to a classroom. So that was the right format. I would say unless you're planning on doing a PhD, that does play a role in what you've studied, where you've gone. It does in that aspect. But otherwise, for me as a person who hires, it really is. It's really about the foundational. I mean, it's adding to your skill set. I don't think it matters from my perspective.
And I did actually mine right after my undergrad, but that was my second career, so I wasn't an engineer right from my get-go. I actually did something else for a number of other years, and it was very, very different. I was a dental assistant.
Wow.
So yeah, and then I went into materials engineering to do dental materials research and design, thinking I could do things a lot better. Did one project with the university in their University of Alberta with the Faculty of Dentistry, and said, heck no. They're very, very similar word to that anyways. And then decided not to continue on with that path. Fund risk management, loved it. So I think we all find our path as we go through. But having gone through a different career and different life experience, like Denise was saying, it made it a lot easier to take the MBA portion and the MEng portion, then just absolutely apply everything that you already had for life experience so that you could figure out what they were actually trying to let you do in an organization. So it was very useful that way. So depending on the circumstances, sometimes it makes sense to do it right after, but a lot of times if you don't have the life experience, you're better to wait that little bit of time, is my opinion as well.
I did a similar thing. I trained to be a teacher. I have a humanities degree. When I finished that, I realized that I love math too much, and I started an engineering degree, totally without any motivation. Do I use my humanities degree? I use it all the time. When I manage projects, probably 90% of the time, that's what I do. The other 10% is doing calculations and looking at spreadsheets and doing budgets and things of that nature. So, you never waste it. You are a mosaic of fantastic experiences. The other thing that I do recommend, having been from outside of Canada, this is my 11th country, travel. Because that really, maybe not to space, I don't have that ambition, but travel. Because not only meeting people all over the world makes you incredibly rich in experiences, but that being outside challenges your body, challenges your mind to adapt. And as it was said, Darwin ascribes the survival to adaptation more than anything else. Not the smartest, not the cutest, but the one who can adapt.
So another thing I was, as I was sitting at my table thinking, I heard people say that they don't have any guilt being a female leader. I look to you, Lois, because one of your responsibilities is when there's an emergency. So I'm sure there's times that something's come up when you've had something personally planned. So do you feel the same way, that you've never experienced any guilt, especially in your leadership role?
Guilt as guilt with my family or guilt with work, or both sides?
Yeah.
Boy.
Where you should think you need to be in both places and can't.
I never really worry about the guilt piece. I worry about where I can add value the most, and who needs me the most, and that kind of thing. But it's never about balance. That balance is a word that never is used in our lives. It's about being comfortable with chaos and kind of being at peace with it so you can make a rational decision instead of being worked up about the emotional issues. You can look at the situation with perspective and say, this is where I should be at this point in time. And I guess it's not so much not having guilt, it's not having regret. I always think that I make the decisions with the best information I have at that time. And I think it's a Maya Angelou thing, when you know better, you do better. And so you're always, a lifetime of continuous improvement and continuous learning, but I never look back and say, boy, I wish I'd made another decision. I wish I'd had a year off on mat leave instead of 6 months, because you're past that point now. You did what you thought was the best thing at the time, and you just kind of move on. And I guess for most of us, it's our support system that allows us to do what we do. So if I didn't have the husband I have, if I didn't have the sons I have, if I didn't have the network of friends and family, I'd probably be a different person. But I'm very grateful and appreciative of what everyone does to allow me to do what I can do.
Super. Does any of the other panelists, have you ever had that feeling of needing to be in two places and knowing that maybe you can't and someone's going to lose out?
Yeah, I feel guilt all the time. It might not be guilt, but you feel like you want to be both places. So I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old son, and every morning I leave, and the 1-year-old gives a little cry as he's with the nanny. I feel bad, but by the time you get to work and you enjoy work, you enjoy the people you work with, that adds some value. But then at 4:30, I'm ducking out the door so that I can get home in time. So I think part of it is where you're at in your life right now. I think when you look back, it won't feel as bad, but you've got to find what works for you and accept that you're not going to hit that balance or whatever it is every single time. Sometimes you're going to miss, and sometimes you're going to nail it, and just keep striving to try and make it work. And you'll build those things that help you. You'll get the nanny, or you'll get the housekeeper, or you'll get your mother-in-law to come look after the kids or something. It'll work out. You just got to keep trying. I have a friend that said, there's not much that can't be fixed with more money or less sleep. So, and I use that as kind of yeah, you're right. So you just kind of got to keep the big picture in mind. And, if you're feeling really bad about things, then you have to do something different, but just keep plugging along.
Anyways, I just remember I had a supervisor. This was years ago, and it was my dad's 70th birthday. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be late for the meeting. Can I come the next day? And she said, absolutely not. And that's one thing I felt really guilty about. She said, there will always be another birthday. And so when I tell my employees, family comes first, and they really appreciate it. If there's an emergency, anybody's family says, family always comes first. And that's what I live by. It's like, I don't feel guilty about that. Your family always comes first. And they really appreciate it. And I'll never remember that. I always remember the comment, there will always be another birthday. I said, no, there won't be.
Not always, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah. So I went through school when my daughter was little. So when I decided to go back to university, she started at being 3, and then I took 5 years, and then I did my 2 masters. So I did 7 years. So she was 10 when I finished school, and that was kind of tough, because that's an age when you want to spend a lot of time with them. So I know time management skills. I think every single person here will say the same thing. Time management skills become absolutely crucial for you, and you figure out what are the important things that you have to do. So from a work perspective, from a school perspective, from a life perspective, what is it that you cannot miss? And once you prioritize that yourself, then you'll be able to manage it. And it'll be different for every single person. So for me, I wanted to, as many days as possible, pick my daughter up from school. That was critically important to me. So that's what I would plan everything around that. My ability to do that was my success rate or not. And so everybody finds what it is that works for them. But it's the prioritization of what you just really feel like you have to do.
I have a bit of a sensitive, maybe even embarrassing question, but as...
Way to go, Felicia.
But as a woman, I found that, we have great qualities like empathy and intuition and things like this, but it also makes me vulnerable to emotions. And if you're in an important meeting, having maybe a heated discussion or something that you're emotional about, how do you control your emotions to not look sad or like a girl, or especially when talking to a man who would never understand that aspect?
I had 2 older brothers who teased me unrelentingly as a child, and I learned to be able to control it. So I don't cry easily. I don't get mad easily. And I think that's really good training for all of us, is to just, because I do think, I still think that crying is unacceptable in the workplace, because I think it creates an uneven communication then. You've put that person in a real awkward situation. So I do think that's something we have to get mastery of. And that maybe in 10 years there'll be a different opinion of this, but that's my opinion for right now, is we really have to get mastery of our emotions to be effective.
Yeah, let me add to that. There is a flip side to showing your emotion, because when you try to build trust, there's a totally different layer of the human being that comes into bearing. And if anything, when you deal with clients, for example, a little bit of redness in the face, or a quick smile, or a twinkle in the eye, or a tear may show the human side of you and that you're genuine. If there's anything that is pervasive in business, and the oil sands business in particular, because it's very male-dominated, is that cold face, not trustworthy, the business being not the cleanest thing in the world. We have to change that. And one of the ways we change that is using our instincts. So, putting aside don't cry in public, and I once had a whole bunch of young engineers coming to Fluor and asking, so what do you do to succeed? And I asked them, he says, well, what do you think women are famous for? And, well, talking on the phone too long, being late in meetings, passing gossip, okay? Well, they were telling me all these things, okay? So it says, memorize that list. This was before the days when you could take a photo of the board. It says, memorize that list, guys, and never do that. Because yes, we have a reputation, maybe unfair, but that side, I think, with maturity, it came the realization that it's okay to occasionally cry in showing your emotions. Don't give that up too much.
Thank you.
I've also found that if you can identify what the problem is, why you feel so sensitive about something, or what is bothering you, that helps you master it. So if you can actually be specific about the problem, then you can communicate it. If you don't understand it, that's why you get frustrated, and that's why you get upset. But that's just, and a lot of breathing and focusing and biting your lip also helps. So.
Thank you.
I want to continue the same discussion. Have you ever heard a man shouting out loud when he becomes very angry in a meeting? Yes. Is it okay? No. But they do. Then this is the man side of showing the emotion. And most people find it, I don't want to say okay, but they cope with it. They go with it. But a woman crying is like humiliating, which is really not. This is how we show emotion. And to be integrated in this male-dominated environment, we are compromising a lot from ourselves and our emotions, I think, and I believe. Am I right? And can I get comments, please?
So I actually worked with a fellow who was a shouter. And so when he would get into meetings, that was his mannerisms. Like he was a very loud person, but he liked what he called a good fight. So that was his way of exploring ideas, but he never shared that with the team, that this was the way he was going to do it. And I reported directly to him, and my team was extremely, extremely uncomfortable with this fellow. So I ended up having a one-on-one conversation with him and saying, just so you know, you're making the entire team uncomfortable, and that this is not acceptable when you're trying to communicate, because all you're doing is you're making the people shut down. So I'd let him know what the behavior was, what actions would be needed for it to be better in the future, and then I monitored it. And he actually asked me to let him know how he was doing, give that feedback after meetings. And so I did that for a number of months with him, and he actually got a lot better. So a lot of times they don't even understand that this is their mannerisms. And if you don't call them on it, if you if you say that's okay, then they can't change it because a lot of times they're just not aware.
Sorry, I want to add, by being okay, I don't mean that we have to do it all time. What I meant was we don't have to feel guilt or humiliated for our reaction. Because I don't think men get that feeling of being humiliated for being angry. Am I right?
I just think that there's nothing at work that's so important that you're going to get that emotional about. I hate to say it, but those kinds of emotions are for your personal relationships. But in a work environment, there should be a sort of a standard of behavior that neither men nor women violate. Part of that is not yelling, it's a respectful workplace, but also it's not bringing that supercharged emotion into the workplace. I mean, to me, it's unacceptable whether you're a man or a woman.
So I'd actually ask the panel, has anybody ever cried at work? Because I can say I never have.
I don't ever remember doing that. I felt like it many times. But no. Never did it. Never did it. No.
I actually remember a boss shouting at me, and he said, "I can't get a reaction out of you, and I can't read you." I said, "Not to be read." I went home and I cried my eyes out. I waited until I got home.
I wanted to ask you a question about challenges that you might have faced moving from a technical position to a management, leadership, executive position, especially if you're in a situation where you are a leader on a technical team. That team maybe 80% made out of men who might be older than you, who might be more technically capable than you. How do you win in this situation? What would be your advice?
Well, I worked in my fractionation days. I was an ops team lead at the Sarnia frac plant, so I had all 4 shifts reporting to me. The shift team lead, there's about 10 people on a shift. The shift team leads are all 30-year guys. They know it inside and out. And the thing that kind of my mantra was, just because you're the manager doesn't mean you need to know everything, right? You're not the expert. And the more you become comfortable with that and recognize that, then I think the more successful you are. And you're the manager because you've got other skills. And so you need to recognize where you draw the information you need at any given time. And so, trying to act like you know everything, you're just going to stumble and fall. But if you say, hey, okay, you've worked in this job for 10 years, what do you think of it? Bring the option to the table, and then as a team, we'll make a decision.
Perhaps the idea about being younger than others or less experienced than others. First of all, we are a team. It is not the military. It is not a pyramid. It's not the boss and everybody is underneath. We are in this whole thing together. So somebody has to lead. Somebody has to drive the bus. Let's say, and you have to. People have to respect you. First of all, you have to be a good boss. You have to remember about being a good boss. People, will expect to have, time for families, time for themselves, bad days and good days. And that empathy actually does make you a respectful leader. So, it really doesn't matter. It almost goes with the territory that you are going to have somebody more experienced than you one of these days working for you, indeed. And you can be still a great boss.
And so, I actually had a team that was extremely, extremely experienced that I moved into as the leader. And in that team, it was a challenge at the very beginning until they gained respect. So once I gained their respect, then they actually came to me and said, well, what can I do for you? But I worked with them initially by saying, so I'm not the technical expert. I will be relying on you, so that they understood what their role was. And I said, but what I am going to do is I'm going to support you. Any ideas that you really think need to be heard, I will bring those up and I will support you to get changes done where you think we need changes. So then that really clarified what their role was versus what my role was. And then I gained enough knowledge and had them train me so that I would feel confident talking about their ideas to other management team members.
So this is it just through your guys' experiences in your teams, let's say employees or people that you were working with, what were some qualities that you really admired and made, certain people stand out and made you have confidence with them and maybe be supporters of them?
So sorry, just to as the manager or leader, what do I look for in my team? I'd say probably number one, self-leadership. Are you showing up on time? Are you prepared? Are you curious? Are you working as a team? Those types of skills. People that want more. I tend to work the other way. Instead of working, I work work with the folks that are underperforming, find out why, and either help them transition or get them up to the point. But I tend to focus most of my time on the high achievers. So you demonstrate that you're curious, you're eager. I will throw as much at you as you want and can handle. And the development plans and those types of things are important to me to make sure you stay with the organization. I think we typically spend so much time on the bottom performers and ignore the top performers. I can't, how many times a top performer comes, I want a development plan, and the whole year goes by and we haven't done anything with them. So important to, so step forward and take those things. And a good boss will help nurture those things and encourage those things and challenge you and diversify your skill set. So, but I'm looking for that self-leadership first and foremost. I don't just hand it to you just because you happen to, have a degree or whatever. Yeah.
So one of the things I look for is someone who has the ability to extend beyond the tasks that I've given them to do. So if I ask someone to come with a deliverable and they come and they actually do far more than I thought they could do, then that person will stand out in my mind tremendously. So they have to get their work done on time. They have to give me a quality product. They have to be able to produce a good amount of work in a time. And if they can do that extension and just take it that step further, then to me that makes them stand out tremendously.
I think we as women in engineering need to do a better job showcasing why we love engineering and technology rather than the hardships and challenges we might face. So can each of you talk about why you love your job and why you love being in a leadership position?
I'll go first before everybody takes the answers. Well, I chose the path. I had a choice of staying in the technical field or going into management, and I decided going into management. It uses more and I have to admit, I do miss the technical part of the job. But in my present role, I'm responsible for H&S, people, financial. There's never a dull day. I wish sometimes there were. But, that's what I enjoy about my work is just the variety of different skills that I need to perform my work.
And I'm similar. When I first started out doing plant engineering, I phoned my sister, she illustrates children's books, and I said, "It's so gray. It's just so gray." And I kind of needed more. I love the multi-stakeholder part of my job. I also like the feeling that you're making a difference and you're making the world a better place. And it's a little altruistic, but I think that sometimes your job can be a calling rather than a career. And I feel that you tend to find yourself moving into that place that you're meant to be. So I think all that plant engineering experience and everything helped me to understand and to be able to communicate with the people that I need to. But I really like the multi-stakeholder aspect and just in my group we have microbiologists, agrologists. I think I've got 4 PhDs, of course engineers, hydrogeologists, hydrologists, and it's nice to take all that and bring it together and do a project that has a real benefit to society in the long term. So it's rewarding.
I've got a degree, a chemical engineering degree. I never planned to be a technical person. My plan was always to use that engineering degree to do something, to build off of it, to do more management type roles. which is good because I like to. What I like to is to make a difference, is to make things better. So I can use that knowledge I have of a technical perspective and apply it in health and safety and projects, what have you. I now find myself returning back to a technical role, or going to be a technical role, and I'm a little nervous. I'm having to go back and understand thermodynamics and get back into it. So I've kind of gone full circle. But I also see it as a good opportunity to build my skill set, so that now I will become very good at SAGD, and I will understand what those processes actually are and how to make a difference, versus just kind of managing at that high level. So it doesn't, it's not linear. Things move in circles a lot, and you just take those opportunities as they come.
I come from the non-technical side, so it's that's been a real challenge for me, is to find my place in upstream oil and gas, which has been tough. But I think I think back to one boss that I had years ago, and I used to get so frustrated with the folks on the other side of the fence, whoever that was. And he used to just look at me and smile and nod and say, seek to understand other people's obstacles. And I was like, yeah, but shouldn't those people know? And seek to understand other people's obstacles. So I think what's become a focus for me is bringing the different teams together, right? I mean, that's why I studied the 4 disciplines in the PhD. That's why I've studied the business and the engineering. And that's now where my focus area is helping folks on each side of the fence understand those obstacles, to try to work better and better alignment in the executive team and throughout the organization. So that's where I found my value is, and that I enjoy.
Yeah, it's live too. Okay, so I'm like Kim. I had never actually planned on being a technical engineer, although I've been in specialist roles before, but that's in risk, which was my area of expertise. But I did my MEng and my MBA specifically looking to do something more on the management side. So that was my goal and path all the way along. You get technical roles in between, but I think most rewarding is when you get to feel like you've made a difference. So we've talked about that a little bit here. And I know for me, it's not just like a project or something. I'm really focusing right now on moving the whole industry forward, making the industry take a step change forward. And to me, that is hugely rewarding. And if we do that, it's not just a project, not just me, not just my organization, but it's a change that everyone's going to feel as a result of that.
I think everything has been said already, but let me add my 2 cents worth here. First of all, being an engineer, when I practice engineering, at a calculator, right? One of the very first HP calculators that were sold. I did stress engineering for big pipelines and refineries, and I love that, absolutely love that, because the safety aspect and the creativity and trying to make it within a certain cost and on time. It was a hell of a challenge to do that. And the fact that nobody checks your work, you're it. It was important. Even before computers, you really had to be good at it. But what we built up on this, and I could hear from the leaders sitting next to me here, is that appreciation for technology and how things are made, how things fly, how that solar car moves forward, why that refinery turned the key and it actually is producing gasoline. It is one of the most amazing things I can do in life. Very close to being a mom to 2 wonderful children. It's just as rewarding. So, we try to pass that passion and encouragement to the girls in high schools. My goodness, there's nothing particular to being good in calculus, in mastering computer sciences, creating things, inventing things. It doesn't have a gender. So don't get into that fearsome situation that it requires a guy to be an engineer. It doesn't. You're just as good at it. So that's that aspect of even consider that, in not be swayed by what the expectations around you may be.
Thank you. I just wanted to say what I've heard consistently today and yesterday is that over 20 years, nothing has changed for women. What I've heard from every one of the speakers, including the panel, is that you go into engineering, you love math and whatever, but everyone in the last couple of days talk about the female side of it. They like the nurturing, making a difference. Therefore, if over 20 years, the numbers haven't changed, women are leaving, women are not going into engineering, and we are trying to be women, I'm not an engineer, and you are trying to be like the male within your companies, and it hasn't worked. Isn't that the definition of insanity, right? It's 20 years later and you're still in the same spot. What I'd like to ask you is, if you're educated, you've got your degrees, you've been in engineering for 15, 20 years, but the parts that you say that you enjoy is the sharing, the nurturing, and the caring. Based on what you've seen today, and I mean, some of you have just arrived, and you've heard all the other speakers, you've heard Natalie, the 28-year-old young lady over there, share her experience. What do you think should be different? Like, what should you as senior engineers assist the younger engineers in understanding? You're not a man, right? I totally agree with not crying in business. But if over 20 years, nothing has changed, women aren't staying in engineering, women aren't going in engineering, and we've tried to bring out more of your masculine qualities and nothing's changed, why not just be yourself? Why don't women just be yourselves? I mean, I do agree with not crying because you're not going to be taken seriously. Why not just be you? Does that make sense? Because you can't be anyone else, because it's not changing the way engineering is viewed. And when you're dealing with the younger engineers, why not encourage them to just be yourself? You didn't just get your marks, you earned it. You're not a man, you're a woman. So I'm trying to understand how to assist the younger engineers, the engineers that are attending university, and understanding if nothing's changed in 20 years, that's the definition of insanity for the women to continue to act the way they're acting. That's my little take.
Well, I think things have changed. You know, heard some of these speakers come up and they talk about some of the stuff, the water being dumped on your head, or, you know, paychecks being taken out of your mailbox, or things like that was ridiculous, and it would never happen. At least would not have happened in my company today. You know, that's not acceptable. And to see, you know, this conference go on and women come and talk about these sort of things, I think there have been changes. But there's also been societal changes. And, you know, you hear about Generation X and Generation Y, and I don't know what the next one is. And people want different things. So I think, you know, they're trying to bring more women into engineering, but also what women want is different. So sometimes, you know, they don't necessarily want to go through 4 years of what they hear is really tough school, and, you know, where they could go in and do a finance degree or something like that, you know. So you've got almost competing pressures on society. And I think what we need to do is get out there and talk to women and young girls and say, you know, that it's not super hard to go through engineering. It's challenging, but it's doable, and you'll get a very rewarding career after. And you need to explain that in ways that they can understand, because people don't understand what engineers do. My mom of her 6 daughters that she has, 2 are engineers, and she couldn't tell you what an engineer does, other than can really program the TV quite well, you know. So people don't understand, and they know that they do something with oil and gas and that sort of stuff. So I think we need to make it more clear to young girls what engineering is and what it can be and what benefits it gives you.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it was probably tough for women. Like, I'm thinking probably the first, you know, firefighter and the first police officer, right? I mean, I think a lot of those folks have really forged the road for us, and thank you to that. So I think in some ways it's a different world, in other ways it's not. I find it fascinating that the company, I subcontract for some folks, and one of them is highly technical, and they found a skill in me that they like that adds to their skills. And then one of the other companies is pretty much all, you know, gray-haired men that are 50 years of age plus that have brought me in as a, what am I, 20-something now? And so I think a lot of it, though, is being very clear on your value and what you bring to the table. And I think if you're clear and you articulate that well, you know, people look for that value to add value in the workplace, which has worked for me. But at the same token, you know, thanks for the folks who forged the path, too.
So we all heard the stats that Alex Johnson showed us, and we saw particularly how disturbing the stats are in Alberta. Could each of you maybe talk a little bit about maybe what's not happening at your companies that should be happening? More senior managers, more senior female leaders. How do we make that happen?
I would say, we are making headways in our company. We're trying to hire more female engineers. And I must admit, I was one of the first female engineers they hired. And it was like a new baby at the company. And, I've stuck around for 10 years. And, we have this mentor group. So, I try and, mentor the women coming in, no matter what field they're in. And I get a lot of phone calls. And men, too, they ask me, how did you get where you are today? And I look at them, I say, just hard work. Like everybody else, it's just hard work. Stick with it and, do what you really enjoy and stay true to your values and ethics. And I think that's really important. That's something nobody should compromise.
Well, BP, we have, at least BP Canada, we have our regional president is a woman, our CFO, our CPO are women. We've got a lot of, our health and safety is a woman, so we've got a lot of VPs that are women. So in terms of there being examples, that's great. I'd say probably the biggest challenge from our company is how do you get to those levels? A lot of them there don't have children or aren't married. So I think that's the challenge: is how does the woman with 2 small children get to that next level without having to relocate to another country or or work 60 hours a week or something like that. So having those models out there where they've done it, having 2, both spouses work. That's a big challenge. There's a lot of successful models where the woman has gone on to more successful roles and the husband stays home. Well, my husband insists on working, so it's a bit of an issue. So that's where I see challenges. How do you keep having a rewarding career, where you have you have a working spouse and you have small children, and how do you add value and enjoy your role?
Maybe I can talk a little bit about Fluor. We have seen, the company is 100 years old, literally. Last year was the 100th anniversary. And, I've seen 36 of those years, so 1/3 of their existence. And things have changed tremendously. We wouldn't be sitting here at a table, discussing, the subject with everybody else. And, we don't see that change because we are impatient, being women. One of those things I wrote on the board. And we expect immediately to sink into a 50-50 mix of men and women. Oddly enough, in communist countries where women had a chance to go to university, everybody went, and then had a chance to apply for the job of their lifetime because engineering paid better than other professions. The office in Gliwice that we have in Poland, which I happened to manage between 1997 and 2000, I can show you a photo. It's fully 50-50%. So when circumstances were such that women went to school, the miracle happened. And in Fluor, we are a U.S.-based company. There was a lot of maybe backlash during the 80s and 90s about quotas. So, and that is a form of discrimination for both men and women because it puts people in a totally different perspective, and they're wrong, simply. The focus wasn't on developing an integrated team that appreciates and celebrates diversity. But on the other hand, it was, I need some women, so we can have some colors in the audience. And, if you don't have the right focus, it will never happen. But fortunately, it is happening. And I'm very proud to say, Marie Course maybe talked yesterday that we have a GROW initiative at Fluor that is getting a lot of traction right now. And we get a lot of questions. We mentor a whole bunch of ladies who are flourishing under our support. Just like I flourished under some men mentors in my days, but it is happening slowly. We have to push, okay? We have to stay with it. So indeed, if you believe in it, it's going to happen.
And I talk to the Enbridge perspective. So for Enbridge, we have the feminine network, which is females in engineering. And so we have that as well as a women in Enbridge. So we have some of these things in place, and those are things you wouldn't have seen 10, 15 years ago. So it's huge progress that way. You asked the question what you think we could do better. So I think one of the things that we need to do better as organizations in the oil and gas industry in general are to really look at the skill set and the talent pool that we have and make sure that all of those skills and talents are fully utilized. Because I think that we're not doing that effectively today. That there's a lot of people who come in with previous work experience, and because they may not have worked in your company or in your industry, that maybe some of that is not being thought of as transferable skills. But a lot of it is. So I don't think that we're giving credit adequately for some of the things that people are bringing in with them when they join the corporation. So I think as an industry, that's something that we could all do better. And then the other thing I think we need to do is to make sure that we are very purposefully looking to the female engineering population and the professionals and say, let us make sure that you have visibility in the organization through the roles that you have and through the projects that you put on, so that you have those opportunities to talk to the vice presidents and to talk to the CEO and to have those kind of opportunities that if it really helps to build your own network and to show your value so that you can be put on those succession plans further on. So I think that's key. And as an industry, we can do better at that. And Enbridge is one that we're working on it, but it's a long way to go.
I have something that kind of relate with this. Before I came to the conference, I heard in my office, one of my male coworkers complain to the other one after he got the email promoting this conference that he doesn't understand why this such concept exists. Women engineering need to be promoted. This concept exists to be promoted because he think everybody should just do what he or she wants. Didn't understand why this should be promoted. So I wonder what is your input will be, like, because I found many guys don't understand why such a thing exists. They don't think they discriminate female coworkers, female engineers, and they don't understand why it's better if there are more women working in engineering or there are more women in management, senior management, this kind of position.
I wish it was like that this wasn't an issue, that life just went on and we got to the 50-50 and all was good. And for some of those guys, it's legitimate that they have no bias against women, and so it's not an issue to them, and that's actually a good thing. The problem is that there's this subliminal bias, I guess, that people have in the workplace, and that's what we're still trying to deal with. It's where you say something in a meeting and it's not even registering, and then your male coworker says the same thing, and everyone goes, "Good idea, Tim." Like that. I don't know how you came up with that brilliant idea, you know. So the reason why we need this is because exactly what I talked about. It's still an issue, and where your coworker wants to go is exactly where I'd love us to be. I wish we could say we don't need this anymore.
We have at BP, we have a women's network, and we put out a newsletter quarterly. And I'm the editor of the newsletter, and so I'm quite involved in it. And so the little joke I have with the guys that I work with is they're like, "Why do we have this newsletter?" And I go, "You don't have one for the white males." I go, "Yes, the white male has been challenged for so long. It's really tough on them, you know." But, you know, and for myself, I mean, I started, I worked out in the field for about 6 years, you know, and never had any problems. You know, partly it was, I mean, I worked with great people, but I think another piece of it was that these guys had daughters that were kind of my age, and they could see their daughters going on, and they didn't want anybody to treat their daughters poorly. So, you know, so I didn't really need, you know, I never had any real problems. I didn't think there was a glass ceiling. I didn't run into any glass obstacle course or anything. So, and I joined the women's network basically because it was kind of the thing to do. You know, I was kind of getting into be a middle manager, and that's what you should do. And then I went on maternity leave, and I came back, and I started being a working mother. And then I really appreciated being on the Women's Network. Not that anything really changed. We still had the same conversations, but I was talking and interacting with women that had the same challenges either currently or in the past that I did. And it's just nice to talk to someone that gets you. Because a lot of these guys that I work with, they have kids too, but they're not the ones worrying about dentist appointments or, buying a winter jacket before the snow falls and things like that. So women's networks, it's not because we're so hard done by, because I think we've seen that there's been a lot of improvement, but sometimes it's just nice to talk to someone who gets you and understands what challenges you're going through. And then when you have to solve your problem, they just can recognize, yeah, that's a heck of a time to, just keep going and, get through this and it will get better. So it's not always about having to fix something. Sometimes it's just about having a group of people that understand you.
And just actually a little bit on the flip side of that one is that the stats do tell the story. So the fact that there hasn't been that much change over time, to me, really validates the need to have the discussions, to heighten the awareness, and to be able to try and facilitate change in organizations. Because if it was not an issue anymore, then the percent of women that are graduating would be the percent of women that we have in leadership and the percent of women that we have in executive leadership. And that is not the case today.
I would like to ask each of you, what will be the moment in your career that you had to push through, that you had to say, I have to get on this bus, or I had to get this challenge that you think helped you to be where you are now?
That's a heavy question. But let me reach back, way back then. I started working at Fluor. My kids were 4 and 5 years old. I had 2 kids in a row. And so it happens, in the second week, Fluor usually trains you before they put you to work. And I'm there, and this is before I was an engineer, so I'm taking a design class, so to become a good designer. And you have to attend every day. And a phone call comes in. Well, is Miss Wyszkowski in the classroom here? Yes, it is. Well, your child, number 1, just came down with the chicken pox. And, he needs to be taken home. Well, fantastic. I did that. Of course, I had to continue with these classes, and it's heart-wrenching, I have to say, leaving your kid home with a nurse and paying the nurse twice as what you're making at that point. So that was also heart-wrenching. And of course, as kids have it, 2 weeks later, because that's the time of the quarantine for the chicken pox, number 2 gets sick, okay? Here we go again, right? Heart-wrenching moment, paying twice what you're making, okay? And it's difficult. I could have probably dropped the towel in those days and said, well, I had enough of this. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. But you push through it. And marvelous time in my life, my children attending my engineering graduation and telling me they're so proud of me.
Might as well just walk down the line. Okay, so challenging situations. I think I talked a little bit about when I left the last company I was at before I came to Enbridge. And that to me was a defining moment for me, because it's those challenges that present opportunities. So I don't necessarily see it as having to push through something that was really, really hard, but choosing to see and take an opportunity when it actually was right there in front of my face, and I just took 2 years to figure out it was there. So apparently some of us don't listen very well. But when the opportunity is there, then actually taking that opportunity. And the best thing I ever did was making that one change that helped my career to move to where it is today and to make me happy and love coming to work every day. So I think that you push through those things, but everybody has these barriers that we've had at some point, and it could be a role, it could be somebody you reported to, it could be all of those different things, but they present different opportunities. Sometimes they're a learning opportunity, sometimes they're a growth opportunity, sometimes they're a change opportunity.
Lots lots of them, but one of the ones when I was working in the U.S., I was reporting into the executive team, and they kept moving me around to make some pretty significant organizational change, and so they were sending me out, which was going to be move 4 and 5 in 3 years. I had lived in 5 different states, but one of the ones that were sending me out to is something I had no skill set in, and I was going to be supporting one of the VPs out there. And I remember he sat me down and he said, "So I looked at your resume and it's outstanding. You're working on another master's and you've got one in a really interesting background." I'm like, "Thanks," and feeling really good. And he goes, and where I think I can use your skills the most is, I need somebody to help me with my PowerPoint presentations. And I think that would, you look like that might be something that you could do. Like the COO was sending me into this job and senior vice president, and I phoned my parents at home and I was like in tears and I'm like, "What am I going to do?" And my dad said, "Will you gain though from having this exposure? Like, will you grow personally and will you grow professionally if you go out there?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then that's your answer, right?" And I went out and it's an unbelievable skill set that I have now coming back into Canada. The guys, when I all left, they all said, "You're not leaving because we were mean to you at the beginning, were you?" And I said, "No, I'm leaving because I think I accomplished what I was here to do." And he said, "Absolutely, we respect you for what you did." And but it's sometimes those decisions, I could have ran from it and stayed where I was, but I'm glad I persevered and changed their opinion and made some good differences in the organization. But there's lots. You get lots of them in your career.
I think the biggest challenge for me was about 10 years in. I've been in liquids the whole time. So in liquids, you make propane and butane. It's light ends. It's clean. It's a nice place to fractionation tower. It's pretty simple. It's great. And then I had the opportunity to come in and be a wells HSE team lead. So that's drilling and completions, but be the HSE team lead in that role. So I didn't know wells, I didn't know gas, and I didn't know HSE. I knew HSE was a bit annoying, but other than that, I didn't know, I wasn't an expert in HSE or anything. And it was one of the hardest roles that I've ever had because it was such a steep learning curve and such a tough group of guys. I mean, great guys, but tough, right? They're not pulling any punches. And but it was the best role that I've done in terms of learning about myself, and learning something new. I wouldn't do it again, and but I gained a learning of wells, I gained a learning of HSE, and I also learned don't get too comfortable in your roles. Change is good. There's a skill set associated with changing, and you need to change enough that you can respond and you can react, and you don't get totally overwhelmed when things do change. So it was a really good role and a really good experience, but I wouldn't do it again.
I'm just going to talk about my career with Newalta. I've been with Newalta for 10 years, and I've progressed with them. And, I'm glad I made the change from technical to management role. It's really fulfilling to see, when you accomplish something, your project, you meet your goal, your deadlines, and you work as a team. And when the executive, tell you that, geez, your people have a lot of respect for you. And there's nothing better when I hear that, like, they really respect you. And it's just a great feeling, to have a good team working for you. And I can't really say there's any real defining moment in my career. And also, having somebody support you at home, like, yes, you can do it. I think that's really important, to have somebody who believes in you that you can do, because there's always self-doubt. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes I think, geez, what I do, can I do this? But I always tell myself, yeah, I can do it. And just believe in yourself.
My answer is kind of F, all of the above. But one thing I found kind of hard in my career was doing the field work in the early days. We were on the road, there was no cell phones, and you're staying in these awful hotels where you'd put your mouse protection under the door, because I've had too many mice run across my face in the middle of the night, and getting stuck in the middle of nowhere. And just some fluke, I was stuck on this road out by Burnt Timber, and it was a winding road that they actually used for a car rally. And I ran out of gas, and there was a steep slope down on one side, and it was so icy I couldn't move, and a snowfall was happening. My husband was out of town, so he wouldn't know I wasn't home. And I always had my emergency pounded jelly beans in my glove compartment. So I actually ate the whole pounded jelly beans in the first 20 minutes. I was kind of swearing, kind of praying. And then this guy is out 4x4 in the middle of nowhere, and in the road in front of me, he comes out of the trees, not even down the road, out of the trees, and goes, "Oh, thank heavens you're here. I don't know where I am." And I go, "I know where we are. I can't get out of here." He had a winch. He pulled me out. And it was one of those moments like I probably shouldn't have been there. I probably should have told the plant manager, no, I can't drop by, from the field office. I can't drop by the plant on the way home. It's snowing. I better just get out of here. But, luckily it all worked out. But part of it was realizing that because it's not that no one's looking out for you, but you are accountable for looking after yourself. And it's okay to say, anyway, they hauled me back to the plant manager and he drove me back to town. And he said, you should have told me you didn't have four-wheel drive. You should have told me you didn't have snow tires on. I would have never asked you to do that if I'd known those things. And just to kind of be accountable for looking after yourself. And it's not that no one's going to look after yourself, but you've got some accountability there just to keep yourself safe and speak up and all the rest.
Hi. Okay. So I graduated just this past April, so I've been working for Enbridge for about 5 or so months now. And I've just being around the office and meeting people, it's happened to me probably 6-7 times now where within 60 seconds of meeting me, someone said, oh, so you're in HR or you're in administration. Nothing wrong with those, absolutely nothing wrong with those careers whatsoever, but because I have 10 fingers and 2 eyes, why would that be something you automatically pick out? Or, yeah, I'm sure every other person here's experienced when someone asks, what do you take in school or what do you do? And you say, I'm an engineer, and the look of sheer terror or surprise on their face, oh, wow. Or the reaction, good for you, why is that good for me versus a guy or whatever? But I was just wondering, do you guys still experience that? And when you do, how do you react? Because sometimes my reaction, after so many times, is just anger right away, but sometimes you just kind of have to, yeah, okay, but how do you guys react to that? If you do experience it, I'm not sure if you do.
I did a lot in the early part of my career because in the field a lot, so men would say something like, it's a man's world, or were you really good in math and that sort of thing, and you just have to roll with it.
Yeah.
Just invent a story, just play it out, have fun with it, because there's those are the people that I don't know if you're going to move too far on that scale, so yeah, just have fun with it.
Okay.
So I had very similar experiences on a floor actually where I had where my office was where the door was, so you'd get in and then you'd see my office first, and so I'd have people coming up and saying, "Do you know how to use the photocopier?" Because I was female, right? And so I said, "Well, I'm actually not the admin on the floor, but I bet you that together we could figure out how to do that." So I took them over there and I said, let's see, it looks like you pressed the start button. So I would take them and I would show them how to do it so they would do it themselves instead of having to come and feel like they could ask someone to do those things for them. So that's actually how I did it. So I made them do it themselves anyways. But I did it nicely with a smile so that they wouldn't get, a little ticked off with you. So that's one thing. But there are times in your career where you do occasionally have things like that happen. Your friend saying, good for you. My 20-year high school reunion, I went in, and I'm a little different era than you are, obviously. But when I was in my high school reunion, they actually asked, what are you doing? And I had, teacher, nurse, engineer. And they actually went, oh, and they turned around and they walked away. And literally, they walked away because they decided at that point that they had nothing to talk to me about. And it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking for me to have that happen. And I went, okay, fine. So I went around and I just had the friends that I had in my little group when I was in high school. And I just talked to all of them, and most of them were men. And a lot of them were engineers. So I talked with the boys, and they're my peers anyways. So it was fine. But you have to realize that some people just won't know how to talk to you if they feel that, you're different in some way. And that's their choice. It's not necessarily, that there's something wrong with it, but it's their choice and them being uncomfortable. So it's how you react is your choice. And that's how you can affect it.
We actually do this to ourselves all the time. Early in, I graduated, they invited me to be a part of the Society of Women Engineers in California, right? What was the big difference, right? I quickly joined the Society of Mechanical Engineers just to show them that I didn't have any particular skills because I was a woman. It was nothing particular. And I know that we need to do these things because we haven't arrived there yet, and we need to have meetings like these. But why do we say a woman engineer? We never say a male engineer, but we do say a male nurse. So our language causes those things, right? Of course, had anecdotes along the lines of, honey, may I talk to your boss? Sorry, I am the boss, okay? Dear Mr. Wyszkowski, and they know my name is clearly the first woman ever created, it was called Eva, right? So, dear Mr. Wyszkowski, would you like to join us for a game of golf? And along those lines, we are going to send you a nice tank top. Well, the tank top is so massive that I could probably put it in the carpet in the living room, right? Or you get one of those Western buckles around stampede time that could cover your entire chest and some, right? Or make you fall forward on your face, right? Or sizes. Things that button from the right to the left, of course, yes. Things that are inappropriate. That has happened too. I have gotten a nice risque book once, full of, ladies that do something else for a living than me, obviously. And they must have been photographed in a very warm room, too, okay? For that matter, when I got to Poland, one of the first things I noticed, there was a lot of Fluor calendars. Of course, we acquired a Polish company, an institute, a technical institute, so I have to forgive him for that. But there was the lady in the bikini hanging on the wall, and our big president was coming to visit. I have to take all those things down. Again, we are a US company, et cetera, et cetera. Soon after the vice president left, we put them all back up because it makes the guys work better, right? So the world is like that. And I think, we have to be careful with our language not to perpetuate those paradigms, right? We also don't want to demean, people who are in female-dominated professions, because it is absolutely unfair. We are a team. Let's not forget that. So, to find that happy medium, treat it with humor, like I just shared with you.
I have a question around, you are all leaders in your organizations, and you look at organizational structure and how processes work and the like. I have a question around succession planning, because of course it's smart business, right, to plan ahead and bring up leaders and future leaders, and we talked a lot about that today. But there is a point in your career when you have to think about yourself, and that it's time for you to stop developing your own career and start passing on knowledge to future generations. So I just want to ask the question, how much time do you spend on succession planning yourselves, and how do you bring up those future leaders?
At this end of the table, as I mentioned before, we spend an awful lot of time, at least at Fluor, in formal mentoring of people. We have mentoring programs. We have a yearly succession survey in which we have to select at least 4 people that can do our job today, plus in the next 5 years, plus in the next 10 years. So companies that have a desire to exist for a long time and are made out of walking resources, that's all of us, have to do those things. Just like you would, when you have to make sure that the turbine gets replaced or the tray gets inspected in a refinery, in a plant. Here we are dealing with human beings, so it's absolutely necessary that we, all of us, be generous in passing that knowledge, institutional knowledge, taking on people who are fresh from school, onboarding them into the company, basically creating that perpetuity in companies. I tend to favor women when I select mentorees. I'm known for that because I simply think that, might as well tilt the scale a little bit in that direction. But many men have also been mentorees of mine. And again, we need to reach a happy balance, but generosity is important in this thing. We all have to do it. You have to do it.
Well, I'll echo that, but also to add to that, I think that every single person is actually both a mentor and a protege for your whole life. So truly, as you are a brand new grad, and if you were my protege, then what I would do is I would do some reverse mentoring, and I would hopefully at some point in time, and Jessica, I promise I'll do this, I need to learn how to use Twitter. Yeah, I don't tweet. Yes, at all. And I need to learn how to do those things on social media. And that's something I don't know how to do, but I can rely on some of the folks that are just coming in that are really good with technology to teach an old bird how to do some of these things. And that's where I would rely on reverse mentoring, so that you could teach me some skills and then I could teach you some skills. So those are things that we definitely find are useful. So through your whole career, you'll be both a protege and a mentor. So I'd encourage you to think about it that way. I know at Enbridge we have some very formal programs and things as well in place, but succession planning is a little bit of a more unknown. So one of the things that we did last year within our female network is we actually had the HR people come in and talk about succession planning at Enbridge, so that the female engineering population would understand what it is that goes on. And now they have an advantage because other people don't know. So that actually is a great thing. So now they understand what kind of conversations to have, how to put, everybody knew about the tools that we use, but it's a matter of now understanding what that process looks like and how they can get on and off that process.
Okay. Well, I think that's great. We've actually run out of time. Please join me in welcoming. It's been a long 2 days for me. I have to tell you, I got a coffee this morning. I asked the gentleman at the coffee counter for a cup, and I meant lid. I don't know what's going on with my brain. Anyway, please join me in thanking all of our panel members.